So it takes a fair bit of time and real commitment to healing work to become even consciously aware of where those complexes are. For example, if I was working with somebody that looked like my stepfather, if I wasn't careful, the complex, the broken child in me could become nervous around that person, or anxious, or defensive. So I have to say, okay, I can feel my father complex trying to work in here. I got to shut that off and disconnect from that. But it takes a fair bit of honest introspection to identify those, and people can have hundreds of complexes.
Well, I mean, those are, my language is those are the programs that are there.
Yeah.
And so when they get triggered and activated, it lets us know this is where my healing needs to occur. That I cannot be triggered if I am healed and whole. And it doesn't mean you don't suddenly, you no longer feel human emotion.
No,
it's the opposite. You feel amazing. You're so in presence and in love with your emotions when they show up, because you know that it's a form of communication guiding you.
Yes.
But our programs get activated by other people and scenarios and situations to let us know that we are unhealed. And so, one of the misconceptions, one of the mistakes, I think, in a lot of healing and a lot of coaching work that people try to teach, that, be aware of your inner child, and which is great, but be aware of your inner child and make friends with your inner child. How about you heal your inner child? Hello, you're an adult now.
Yes.
You're an adult. Like, you should not have your inner child activated every other day, or in situations where you have wounds. It's showing you that part of your inner child needs to be healed and integrated, and to no longer show up as a child. You're supposed to be a mature adult. And then the next thing, though, is people wonder, well, but the playfulness of a child, oh, look at that program. Adults aren't allowed to play.
Right.
That's a load of shit. Are you kidding me? I play every day of my life. I'm not a child.
Well, the thing, too, is adults that don't play end up as sick, drugged, apathetic, and nervous, anxious, depressed, afraid, unproductive.
Yes.
I was going to say some other things, but I'll be polite. They become a problem for themselves and society.
Yeah. And their relationship. Who wants to be around you? If you're a CEO, who the hell wants to be around you when you don't have any idea what play is?
Yeah.
And you don't have to be childish, immature. There's a difference. The divine is so playful.
Of course it is, yes.
So you're shifting into aspects of divinity when you're very playful. But childish, immature is very different than being divinely playful.
Part of the problem, too, is our culture is so outcome-oriented. And we go to school and we're graded on everything.
Yeah.
So, Rudolf Steiner says most parents should not play with their children until they learn how to play like a child, because they keep telling the kids they're playing wrong.
Yes. Oh, my goodness.
And so he makes it clear in his education, because, he founded the Waldorf school system, and I've got several of his books. That whole bookshelf behind you is all Steiner books. And so, if a person doesn't know how to play with a child, they don't realize they're actually forcing the child out of their right brain into the left brain, where judgment and narrative happens.
Yes.
And so the child actually can get railroaded into seeing the world as a very narrow place, and also a scary place where everyone's judging all the time. And it can feel very insecure about itself. And the other thing is, when we lose the child, we lose our creativity. And most people go through the standard education system that teaches them what to think, not how to think, which was built by plantation owners so that slaves would not disrupt things like assembly lines and come up with new ideas.
Exactly.
So our whole education system came from the plantation owners and the slave drivers, specifically to teach us to do exactly what we're told and don't think for ourselves.
Exactly.
Which is the opposite of being a child, right?
It's the opposite of being divine.
It's the opposite of being divine.
It's the opposite of being divine.
Basically, what it makes you into is an object of someone else's control. Sound familiar? Look at what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Everybody's becoming an object of the control of a very few people.
Control programs.
Yeah.
And what the mistake people make is, what they don't like it, they want to just fight. And what they don't realize is what you see in the world is the macro
of the
of the
micro.
micro.
Yes.
And so you want to change what you see out there, you have to change in here, which means
Yes.
you have to be willing to go in and do the work to see, well, where are my control programs? Because if I heal that, I'm now connected to my power. Your power, your soul, your higher soul, your power, the divinity that is you, however you want to say it, is always there, but we don't always access it. In fact, we rarely do. We're not in connection to it very much because we run our programs instead of healing the stuff that blocks our light and our power. So when you want to make change out there, you first make change in here. You heal your control programs in here, your fear programs in here, then you can make a bigger difference in the world. And that's part of the mission for some of us, isn't it?
It is. And, there's another side to that too, because I've run across this in many people. And that is that when a person starts accessing their power, if they're not ready to individuate and truly be whole unto themselves, then they still remain dependent on other people's approval.
Yes.
And as soon as you access your power, your creativity unfolds and you automatically become more and more different than everybody else.
Yes.
You say what's on your mind because you're not afraid to communicate your feelings or your needs. You dress the way you want to dress.
Yeah.
You actually start falling out of the consensus norm because you're becoming more of a wise man or a wise woman.
Exactly.
Or a mystic.
Yes.
Or, something that almost always starts off triggering a lot of criticism from within your own family. And then from there, it goes to your friends and you realize, I can't hang out with these people anymore because they don't actually see who's right in front of them and they want me to keep doing the same old crap with them that's not interesting to me anymore.
Yes.
And so there's the path of individuation. In the story of Jesus, that's the story of him going off into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights.
Exactly. He didn't spend 40 days and 40 nights because he liked sand.
No.
Like let's be real about it.
Yeah.
He went there for a reason. He had to dissolve more aspects of his own ego and everything that was coming up for him. This is a very challenging path to choose.
Yes.
And it is warrior's work. And warrior doesn't mean you grab a sword and you cut people's heads off.
No, it means you're brave enough to deal with the reality that exists within you. And I actually call that my technical name for that process. And I always let people know, look, you really have to be ready for healing because as you heal, your soul comes online and your soul is fearless.
Yes, fearless.
Your soul is not afraid to die. Your soul's not afraid to be rich or famous, and it's not afraid to be a gardener who couldn't give a shit about what the next door neighbors are doing.
Exactly.
And so
your soul is a warrior.
I tell them you have to be ready to go into the desert.
Yes.
Because you're not going to be able to do the healing, which in tarot is the hermit, going off and isolating yourself to really authentically grow your mastery of what your potential is within you. But if a person hasn't reached a point of honestly being ready to come out of the child archetype into the warrior archetype, which is the beginning of becoming an adult, then the paradox of it is they make it to a certain point in this spiritual evolution, and all of a sudden they have to start repeating the programs because they keep staying with the people that they need to reinforce their sense of who they are.
Yes, exactly.
So that's one of the reasons I think coaching is so important, because if you don't have a skilled mentor to let you know when you're backsliding or let you know when you're talking yourself out of your own healing.
Exactly.
Or tell you when you're using fear language or what you don't want language instead of what you do want language, or being somebody that you can trust to say anything you want to without being judged.
With no judgment.
Yeah, just like, talk about your kinky sex or your fear of dying or whatever. That with a skilled coach or therapist, the room, the space, the sacred space of coaching should be such that you can share anything and not feel insecure about it. But if a person does not have that, they sure as hell aren't going to be able to do that with their boyfriend or their girlfriend, because most people don't want to reveal things that's going to allow leverage to be used against them. And leverage is a common thing in relationships that damages relationships, right?
Or to stay with, people go to their tribe all the time now.
Yes.
Well, give me a break, knock that shit off, because you're going to, oh, we'll create this really, beautiful space for you. And that's great, except that you don't go to people that tell you just what you want to hear.
No. Yes.
Because that's not healing. That's
No.
enabling. That's codependency.
Yeah.
You have to go to the person who, in a very loving and powerful way that knows divine truth and knows how to speak the language of divine truth, can support you with what you're moving through and healing from.
Yes.
But also is going to tell you what you don't want to hear.
Yes. And that brings up an important point, because when a person's ready to heal, what they don't want to hear becomes what they're ready to hear.
Exactly.
That's one of the ways I know right off the bat if a person's ready to heal. I've worked with a lot of anorexics and bulimics, and the ones that aren't ready to hear the truth fall out of therapy.
Yep.
The ones that are do exactly what I taught the
Yes.
other ones as a kind of a general theme, and they heal. So, and also there's victim behavior. A lot of people get a lot of mileage out of being broken.
Absolutely.
So if they're not ready to stand on their own 2 feet and stop faking that they're crippled and using handicap parking spots, and I'm using that more as a metaphor, although people do that, then they're going to sabotage their own healing, and they'll sabotage their own education and their own coaching as well.
Yep.